Yeah, welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty cool show for you here today. Got a guest we haven't had in a while, but with the NFL draft rapidly approaching, we've got former NFL scout Daniel Kelly on to join us and talk about his top 32 players in this upcoming draft. All right, so look forward to that, and should be a good one if you're a football fan. All right, but before we do that, you know what we got to do. Let's go ahead and make sure we click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell so you can always be aware when new shows come out. If you want the audio only version of the podcast, go ahead, open up your audio only podcast platform, type in the Format Podcast, do a little search. We should come up. Make sure you subscribe there. If you enjoy the content, give us that 5-star review and make sure you leave a comment either on your audio podcast platform or right here on YouTube. Helps us find more sports fans, helps us more sports fans find us. And here we go. Let's get right to it. All right. And joining us today, special guest back for the second time, is a former NFL scout with the New York Jets and now author, owner of FirstRoundMock.com, Daniel Kelly. Daniel, thanks so much for joining the show again. How you doing today, man?
Hey, I'm doing really well, Bruce. Thank you so much for having me back on. I must have done well last time for you to have me back on.
Absolutely. I've really been looking forward to this actually, and this is really your wheelhouse now, and this is something I've been waiting for to do with you, this particular show, and to share with the listeners and the viewers, and really break down your top 32 players coming out in this draft. So the first thing I want to ask you, Daniel, this is a time of year where everyone goes nuts over mock drafts. I got a good friend. He absolutely loves mock drafts. Like we're on a text thread together, and every mock draft that comes out, he's posting it. So a lot of people love that, but you don't do a mock draft. You just do actual player evals. Tell me why you don't do a mock draft and why you just keep it to the evaluations.
Well, I'm somebody that still hasn't won the Powerball. In terms of a lottery, so right. I can't pick 6 numbers, right? Let alone 32.
That's a great answer.
So, absolutely. So it's I think I did a mock last year, a first round mock for SI Jets when I was writing for them, and I think to me it was kind of an epiphany that I got kind of tired of people telling me that I was wrong about this, wrong about that, when the actual evals were correct, but because a guy went to one team when I said he would go to a different team, the whole they kind of threw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. So it's so hard to predict what's going to happen on draft day, and I have a good friend named Ken Becks who really kept talking about value. First round value. And eventually I kind of caught on to what he was talking about. He wrote for FirstRoundMock.com for a while before he went back to his own site, the right for his own draft site. So, it really kind of got me thinking that, I'm going to put together a board much like the NFL does, much like the Jets did. It's a board where, it's based on value. Based on what the game film says. So and FirstRoundMock.com, we're a little bit different than every other first round mock in the country from that standpoint. And we're also different than every other first round mock in the country from the standpoint that everything we do at FirstRoundMock.com is founded on the game film. We've provided fans with the links to the actual games that we have evaluated, bringing the fans a better experience so they can see for themselves what we're talking about versus a lot of these mock drafts. It's just a one-liner with no foundation. Okay. It's not saying, where we saw this or what we see this against. And I feel like the fans, deserve a better experience, which was part of the reason for the whole creation of FirstRoundMock.com, is just giving fans a better view of, not only what the opinion is, but, the thinking behind the opinion.
Got you. So just to give the viewers and the listeners of the Format Podcast a kind of idea of your professional benefides when it comes to the scouting community, you have had the benefit of scouting for one of the best talent evaluators, arguably in NFL history, in Bill Parcells, and one of the best coaches of all time, arguably the best coach, in Bill Belichick. Tell me a little bit about what that was like working with those guys who are clearly geniuses in their field.
It was incredible, Bruce. It was just, I learned so much,
Hmm.
from the both of them. I also had the benefit of working with Mr. Dick Haley. God rest his soul. He recently passed away. He was the architect of the Pittsburgh Steelers dynasty in the 1970s. The guy that
Okay.
drafted Terry Bradshaw, Mean Joe Green, Lynn Swan,
Wow.
Jack Ham, all those guys.
Hmm.
And then also, in addition to Coach Parcells and Coach Belichick on staff with the Jets when I was in pro scouting, I also had the privilege of working with Scott Pioli and
Wow.
also Mike Tannenbaum.
Okay.
And so, having an opportunity to work with it collectively with that group, I mean, we had a Hall of Fame staff. A lot of the young guys I worked with at the Jets have gone on to become GMs. I was on staff with, Brian Gain, who was the GM down with the Houston Texans, JoJo Wooden, who's a director of player personnel for the Los Angeles Chargers, Chris Shea, who's a, an executive with the Kansas City Chiefs. I helped train in. So there's a lot of these guys that kind of, gave me a big picture perspective, what it was like. It was like working in a well-oiled machine.
Absolutely.
Everything had a place, everything had a time. And in the cornerstone of the Jets organization with these gentlemen, what was information gathering. So the old saying around the Jets building was, we're in the information gathering business, gather it but never give it. And so I really learned from those guys that every single piece of information is valuable in the
Hmm.
evaluation process. So that's why a lot of times, the game film is key. There's also other components that go into it. There's background research that goes into it, and just really kind of seeing, get a feel for, one that I think the biggest thing I learned from Coach Parcells, he had what was called a critical factors of scouting. He had 6 characteristics that he looked for in a player, and one of those characteristics was, is football important to him?
Hmm.
And that was really key to me. And that really kind of became ingrained in my mind as a young man. And because football was so important to me, it really resonated with me. And to me, that's really the number one difference between guys that make it in the NFL and guys who become busts, is that want. And that
Hmm.
want shows up on game film. So that was really reinforced during my time with the Jets as well. But it was just incredible being around those guys. I stood in my first year in the NFL. I got a chance to stand in the doorway, kind of the war room. I did have a chair,
Hmm. Right. Right.
but it was just incredible being in that atmosphere
Hmm.
and seeing everything that went into the evaluation process and the decision making process, and kind of seeing how the draft boards were lined up, and just another big thing I learned from Scott Pioli was in our pro department. He always had either with a grade he would put on a player, but he would have either an arrow going up, meaning the player was ascending on game
Hmm.
film, an arrow going sideways, meaning the player had plateaued in terms of a ceiling, or an arrow going down, showing the player's on a decline. So I really learned a lot about grading. I learned a lot about being able to assess if a player was ascending or descending, or they had plateaued. There was a lot of things that I learned there that I look back at in my own evaluating process now on FirstRoundMock.com, that really played a key role in my development as a talent evaluator.
Outstanding. So before we get into your evaluations, quick question coming off of that. We did mention that Bill Belichick, arguably the greatest coach of all time and one of the most detailed, process-oriented guys in the history of the game, he hasn't had particularly great success in terms of drafting, especially at the skill positions. If you could make a quick comment as to why you think that is.
I think there's a degree perhaps of almost, maybe overthinking things a little too
Mm,
much.
okay.
He is so analytical and so brilliant.
Yes.
And the thing I love about Coach Belichick is he's really given me a vision for how I plan and hope to run an NFL team myself one day.
Mhm.
And that's what he did was back in 1989, I believe, when the old commissioner Paul Tagliabue came out and said, no more dynasties in the NFL. We're going to expand from 28 to 32. What once was your third string quarterback is now a starter. The idea was that any given team can win on any given Sunday. And so what the geniuses of what we see in Bill Belichick, and also when he brought Scott Pioli along with him, who was my boss for 2 years, my first 2 years in the league in the pro department, was they were able to beat that system. And how they beat that system is, much like I talked about with Bill Parcells with the critical factors of scouting. Bill Belichick and Scott Pioli, they basically, put together, this is what we want. There's 4, 5, 6 characteristics that are non-negotiable that we want in a Patriots player. Okay. So it's kind of interesting. So my mentor, Lionel Vitale, who was their top scout the first 2 Super Bowls, what he told me is that, after that first Super Bowl victory for the Patriots, every team in the league has like 300 guys, 400 guys on the draft board. Mm-hmm. Well, after that first Super Bowl, Coach Belichick had 75 on his board. After the second Super Bowl, that went down to like 45. After the third Super Bowl, he had like 30 players on his draft board. I'm not talking about a first round board. I'm talking about on his board. Wow. And those. Now that doesn't mean the other 200, 300, 400 players aren't going to play professional football. What it means is they're not going to play for Coach Belichick with the New England Patriots. And because and that's how we've seen over the years. We've kind of seen this kind of evolve where the Patriots keep on winning no matter who's there. A lot of times, they say players are all interchangeable. The coaches all move on. The GM, Nick Caserio, Scott Pioli. Everybody else moved on, but the Patriots kept winning. So that's kind of the interesting thing that I learned from him. And I think at this point he's going through an adjustment period, if I had to guess. But I tell you what, the last person in the world I would ever bet against is Bill Belichick.
I agree wholeheartedly. All right, so let's get to it then. And we're going to talk a little bit about each player in your top 32 and how you came up with the eval and the positioning that you put him in. So with no further ado, let's go. Number 1 overall, Jalen Carter, defensive tackle, Georgia. Tell me a little bit about him and why you've got him as the best player in this draft.
Absolutely. I mean, he's faced a lot of off-season scrutiny. It seems like there's a lot going on swirling around him, but no question. 2 years ago when I looked at Georgia and I was looking at their defensive players that were coming out, the Trayvon Walkers and all that, Nakobe Dean and everybody on that defense, the one player that stood out to me on that defense was Jalen Carter. And I went back and started looking at guys this last year, off this last year's film. Jalen Carter was there again. This guy is a man amongst boys, not only on the football field, but also in terms of his draft class. Bruce, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plays in every single game I've watched where he just takes over the game. He can throw around a 300 plus pound offensive lineman the way a little kid throws around stuffed animals in the room. I mean, the power and the explosiveness. Now, it's not every play. Okay, that's one thing at First Round Mock. We don't just focus on the positives. We don't just focus on the negatives. We bring a balanced a look and a view at the players, and it's not every play. Okay, there's some plays you look at and you're like, wow, what's that doesn't look too good. But there's those handful of plays every game where it's just you see this raw, brute power, this Hall of Fame level power.
Wow. Okay.
When I look at him, I see Alan Page, the Minnesota Vikings Hall of Famer.
Well, that's a heck of a comp. I was going to ask you who your comp was for that. That's something.
Always been my comp. Absolutely. He has this, when someone bench presses weights, he has this ability at times where it's just like, it's just, and the offensive lineman just jolts back.
Okay.
And you see this incredible explosive power. He has a signature lightning fast swim move. Good luck to NFL guards against this swim move. I mean, guards are not that agile. They're not that fast. That's why they're not offensive tackles. If Peter Skronsky's listening, let's turn up the volume, okay? Because it's this quick lightning fast swim move into the pocket. And I tell you, with that size and with his tenacious attack in those situations, it's not that far of a distance from defensive tackle to the quarterback's face. Right there, he just blows up that pocket. So, this is a guy that, to me, is a centerpiece of a Super Bowl champion defense. This is a guy that you build around, and I can't say enough good things about him. I mean, in reality, if people want to dig for skeletons, they'll find him in almost every prospect in the draft, right? And so I feel like there's an unfair scrutiny right now to Jalen Carter. And while some teams potentially could be taking him off the board, if I'm a general manager, I run the card to the podium. I don't walk. I don't take trade calls. I run to the podium. This is the best player in the 2023 NFL draft. He's going to be the best defensive tackle in the National Football League. Prepare yourselves for Jalen Carter to take over.
Awesome. You sound very high on him. And I'll just tell you, with that description, I'm waiting to see him match up against my guy, Quentin Nelson.
Yes, I can't wait.
That's going to be a battle in the trenches. All right. So let's go on to your number 2 overall eval. Bryce Young, quarterback, University of Alabama. Now, quick note, for those of you who missed it, last time Daniel was here, I found this very interesting. He had a very low grade on Bryce Young, but after reevaluating at the end of this season, Bryce Young made a huge jump. Tell me why he made such a great jump for you and why he's now your QB1.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the greatest one-year jump I've seen since I started evaluating 30 years ago. I had a CFL grade. If you're with last time we talked on Bryce Young. I mean, the 3 games I looked at 2021, I was like, there's no chance. He looked jittery in the pocket. He looked like he needed large throwing windows to complete passes. I'm like, this guy doesn't stand a chance. Plus his size and everything else. I gave him, I thought it was like a 7th round pick looking at 2021. In terms of, like, when I say that, I mean, how does the skill set translate to what we've seen work and succeed in the National Football League, right? That's when I say that. So I go back and I look at 2022 game film. It's a different guy. He has complete command of the pocket. He looks like Houdini back there. His ball placements become so much better. And this is a recent change at FirstRoundMock.com with Bryce Young being elevated on my board to QB1, because since August 30th, since I started this journey, CJ Stroud's been my QB1 all along. But there's a few variables that I saw in 2022 when I put Stroud and Young side by side that I said, you know what, this is the guy. For one, I think when it comes to compensating for the deficiencies on a top 10 team in terms of offensive line, Young's ability to create and extend plays on his feet is going to. I'm not concerned about Young's size. I'm concerned about any defense in the NFL being able to not, with their tongue sticking out, be able to keep up with Bryce Young. Because here's the thing: to me, he's a modern day Fran Tarkenton, and what I've seen on 2022 game film. Because he's not only is he very instinctual, and not only is his ball placement become more on point. Not only does he see the field extremely well, plus he has a knack for kind of finding that open receiver in the coverages. But I don't care if it's Sauce Gardner or any of these elite corners in the NFL. And I love Sauce Gardner, my CB1. I compared to Champ Bailey pre-draft. But listen, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi. That's a long time for anybody to cover any receiver in the National Football League. So that's what I think that Bryce Young is going to bring to an NFL team. And to me, and I'm going to put this out there, Bryce Young has the greatest potential of any quarterback I've seen in the last 40 years to be able to come in and turn around a struggling franchise very quickly.
Fair enough. All right. So let's go to number 3, quarterback, CJ Stroud, The Ohio State University. This is the guy I like a lot. This is the guy I would have as QB1. Tell me why you flip-flopped them and what you see from CJ Stroud going forward. Last time we talked, you had very high praise for him as well.
And I still do. I mean, a flip of a coin. Either way, the teams that get these 2 individuals are in great shape. The reason why I flipped them is I thought that Bryce Young was a little bit more instinctual. I think CJ Stroud is a little bit more mechanical. And also, too, Yeah, for sure. And also number two is that when I watched Bryce Young play from behind on the scoreboard, he looked the same as when he looked when he was ahead. CJ Stroud struggled a little bit when he was behind on the scoreboard in terms of his ball placement and also in terms of his composure. So when I look at those two things, when I think both those individuals going to really the worst teams in the NFL, when I say worst, I mean in terms of their 2022 record. To me, that's why Young has a better chance, I feel, to turn around the organization slightly, not by much, but slightly, than CJ Stroud. But listen, I'm certainly not going to rain on the parade when it comes to CJ Stroud. To me, right. I have comped him to a modern day Warren Moon.
Which is incredible. That is an incredible comp.
And you know what's funny about it is because these names go through my mind as I'm watching the film, and I just write them down, right? Mm-hmm. What's amazing is I found out the other day when I put out an article on FirstRoundMock.com is that CJ Stroud's dad used to show him clips of Warren Moon as a youngster. That was interesting. Someone brought that to my attention on social media, so that confirmed my comp to me. I mean, this is a rookie that has a feel of a 10-year veteran, an incredible air of maturity about him. He has the tempo of a point guard in basketball. The rhythm and tempo is something we don't talk about enough in the evaluating community, in my opinion. And it's the ability to keep an offense moving at a steady and consistent pace down the field and get everybody on the same page. A lot of these quarterbacks don't have that ability. To me, a quarterback's like a drummer. Stroud has a tempo of a point guard. He brings an excellent tempo to an offense. Incredible, excellent pre-snap and post-snap, quick play recognition. He processed what he's seen extremely quickly. Another reason I feel that he's going to turn around a team with a struggling record is that he has a fast enough release time in an NFL, a game where the average release time is 2.5 seconds in the pocket. He has that to him. He sees he knows what he's looking at. He has an incredible ability to manipulate safeties and understand where the safeties are lining up. Time after time in the games during, when the TV announcer was talking about CJ Stroud, they would talk about, okay, he reads the safety coming downhill. He knows he's got one-on-one coverage on the outside. Boom, he hits the receiver for a touchdown in the end zone. He's able to move around safeties and defenders. His eyes, he's got that. You hear this only with 10-year vets, how they're able to look off safeties and move safeties with their eyes. Right. He can do that. Gives him an incredible advantage coming into this. My affectionate nickname for CJ Stroud, the human jugs machine. That machine that spits out footballs at practice. Yep. That's him. He's just, and the ball placement. My gosh, the ball placement is incredible. I'd be standing on a table for CJ Stroud if he was on the board. It was my team, turn to pick, because the ball placement's on point. That's different than completion ratio. I'm talking about the ability to put the ball right where it needs to be, right there. Right. I saw this in Mac Jones coming out of Alabama. That's why he was runner-up rookie of the year his first year with the Patriots, is the ability to put the ball right where it needs to be for the receivers have optimum, opportunity to extend plays with the yards after the catch. And he throws so well to all three route levels, short, intermediate, and deep. This guy has everything you would want in a quarterback, just about. And I can't say enough good things about CJ Stroud.
Got you. So before we move on to number 4, 2 of your first 3 top evals are quarterbacks. We know quarterback is the most important position in the game and maybe in sports, period. But there's a couple of quarterbacks who are pretty polarizing that, spoiler alert for watchers and listeners, you have not included in your first 32. And real quick, just give us an idea why you left out Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. What's the deal with that? Those guys are very polarizing in terms of what the scouting and NFL communities think about them.
Absolutely. And I only go by what the game film says. I keep my ego and bias, and I don't know who these guys even are when I turn them on film. So it's nothing personal. It's whatever they put on game film. They're the ones making their football resumes. All I do, like a court reporter, is just write down the information. Yeah. And I'm not just looking for the one-off when I evaluate, Bruce, but I'm looking for patterns and tendencies over a long period of time that keep showing up. To start with Will Levis, there's a couple, 3-4 things in the NFL which I call kisses of death. These are cardinal sins. These are things that you cannot do. These are things that do not translate to success in the National Football League, and Will Levis does all of them. So that's a huge problem. Number one, when he drops back in the pocket, he's very tentative. When he's looking around, he's very tentative. You see a lot of times you see the elbow go back and come back before he makes a decision to throw the ball. That's a big thing. He has absolutely positively no feel for pressure in the pocket at all. He doesn't see even an open face blitz. I posted something on Twitter about a month ago. We're an open face. I call it an open face sandwich. The blitz is coming right at him off a right-handed quarterback's coming off his side, smashes him right in the mouth. Didn't even see it. No feel for pressure whatsoever. Can't get out of the way. Has next to no mobility whatsoever. That's another big problem. And also too is that he has a tendency to really hard stare, receivers like two people to like each other at a bar, right? He locks in, and he just stares at these receivers down. Mm-hmm. That's Sports Center material right there for cornerbacks. Corners are so instinctive, they're so athletic, they can break on passes so quickly, and that if you're staring at the receiver before you throw it, you're not looking off, you're not going through your progressions, you're just staring at the guy. That's going to be a real problem as well. Another big problem that doesn't translate to success in the National Football League is he has erratic downfield ball placement, which is represented by the fact that he had a 45-26 touchdown interception ratio at Kentucky. When I look at that kind of touchdown interception ratio in college, the thing I ask myself is, how does this translate to the National Football League? It doesn't. Mm-hmm. This is why what we saw in Zach Wilson. To me, if I right now today, if I had a choice, if I was sitting in a war room, if I had a choice before trading for Zach Wilson or drafting Will Levis, I would trade for Zach Wilson. And even though I didn't like Zach Wilson, gave him a 3rd-round grade coming out. Why? Because Zach Wilson at least has mobility that Will Levis doesn't have.
Okay.
So when you're looking at a top 10 team again, because the pressure that goes into this, I mean, I have a 7th-round grade on Will Levis. Okay, the pressure that goes into this with these guys coming into situations, when you take those tendencies, can't feel the rush, locks in with receivers, doesn't see opposing cornerbacks. He's so zoned into his receivers. Someone who's tentative in the pocket, someone that gives a tell when he's going to throw the ball, where he's going to throw it to. All these things, plus the erratic downfield ball placement. There's nothing I've talked about to translate to success of what we've seen in the National Football League in the 40 years I've been watching it. And so I don't see any chance. I have a 100% bust rate on Will Levis.
And give me a quick wrap on Anthony Richardson. We've heard that he may have the greatest upside of any quarterback in the draft. He's a physical freak, but what's holding you back from giving him this 1st-round eval?
Well, right. Well, we've heard that from a lot of people who have never stepped foot in the National Football League. It's a lot of people around the league that talk about Anthony Richardson and talk about these incredible traits that he has supposedly. But And let me say this, in all fairness, Anthony Richardson, because he does have really good athleticism. He does have a very strong arm. And remember, we keep the reports balanced at 1st-round mock. He does look the part when he's initially setting up in the pocket. He has good ball handling skills initially when he's going play action. That's where it ends for me, because yes, he can put together an incredible highlight tape that's going to sell a lot of season tickets. But the name of the game is winning. And what I've done, Bruce, is I've gone back and looked at the full body of work. I've looked at almost every single game he's played in 2022, minus like 2 or 3 games. And I looked at one of his games on 2021. I've looked at 10, 11 games on Anthony Richardson. And when you look at the full body of work, he's kind of like we saw with Trey Lance. He's an athlete first who's trying to play quarterback. That's the first problem. And what do I mean by that? Well, anytime things start to break down for Anthony Richardson in the pocket, his first instinct is not to throw, but it is to run. That's why I make that statement. He struggles a lot with pressure, whether it's pressure in his face or it's pressure of a game situation. He'll throw 2, 3, 4. What were you thinking passes in every single game? Very dangerous passes. Another thing about him, I touched on this earlier about release time. Average release time in the NFL is 2.5 seconds. He tends to hold the ball too long. We've seen how that's worked out for Trey Lance in San Francisco.
Right.
When you hold the ball 3.2, 3.5 seconds, nothing works in the National Football League. He does that. So a lot of times when everybody's all in awe of him running around and all this, to me, he's only creating his own drama because he's not able to process. We talked about, how CJ Stroud processes things very quickly. Anthony Richardson does not show in game film that he can process what he's seeing downfield quickly enough in order to make a decision to throw the ball, which puts him in running situations. How many running quarterbacks have we seen last in the National Football League who are just exclusively runners? Trey Lance is banged up all the time, right? We saw what happened to RG3. Now, we see what happened to Justin Fields, even the times that he's run. And he's and Lamar Jackson too, right? We've seen the running quarterbacks, what happens to them is that they have a much more of a tendency and they're more prone to being injured on top of it. And it's all those things to me about Richardson. They gave me extreme pause about him because, again, somebody who can't make or doesn't show the ability to make quick decisions at the college level, how are they going to do it at the NFL level where the game is much faster and much more complex? And then I look at the fact that Anthony Richardson has never completed in high school or at the college level over a full body of work. His entire time in high school, he completed about under 54% of his passes. Let's put it that way. And in college, last year, he was at 53.8%. If you look at the last 10 years of data in the National Football League, what 53.8% completion ratio, translates to, it's at the very bottom of the list among starters. So all these things. So now you're going to take him and put him into a situation potentially where he's going to have all this expectation, all this pressure, all these things going on. This is what aggravates me about overgrading. In the NFL, I think we did an incredible injustice to Trey Lance and also to Zach Wilson. I personally apologize to these guys on behalf of the league, even though I'm not in it right now. because to me, Zach Wilson was a third-round talent. I mean, back when you and I grew up, right? That's where you took quarterbacks that showed developmental upside. That's what the third round is for. Guys that show some things, but they need some things they got to work on before they're able to start. You don't draft those guys top 5 as a savior of an organization. That was never that way when you and I came up. And I had an undraftable free agent grade on Trey Lance, between a 7th round and undraftable grade. If the 49ers would have brought him in at that capacity and let him kind of develop and stuff and kind of come in with those trade packages and kind of learn the game, kind of adjust to the speed, the way a Jordan Love has had time behind Aaron Rodgers, the kind of adjust to the game, the way Kyle Trask has had a couple of years to sit behind Tom Brady and absorb the game, the way Aaron Rodgers even had that opportunity behind Brett Favre for a couple of years to learn the game. These guys need some time. Not only is the size of the football different when it comes to from college to pro, because the college ball regulation size is smaller than the NFL, but the game is so much faster and so much more complex. College kids don't have time to work on this 26 hours a day, 8 days a week like the NFL does, right?
Right.
And so the complexity of the game is, you think you see man, but it's man zone concept combined. It's such an adjustment period. And then these guys go into these terrible situations. They get basically just crushed, not only physically, but also emotionally. Their confidence goes down the drain. And so, I think that, all the talk about, I wrote an article on FirstRoundMock.com. I don't even think it's fair that we're talking about Anthony Richardson in the first round. I think a 5th round grade is where I put him. That's what his game film dictates that he should have. And if somebody were to give him a chance in that round, he could kind of come along without the pressure and the expectations, and he could have a lot better chance of developing than coming in there as the savior of an organization.
Fair enough. All right. So let's get back to the first round evals, your first round mock, as we say. Number 4, Nolan Smith, linebacker, University of Georgia.
I'm fired up about Nolan Smith. To me, he's got more upside than Micah Parsons with the Dallas Cowboys. And I that's what I think of him. I haven't seen a linebacker, with this kind of combination of this kind of speed, this kind of ability to adjust in the pocket, and this kind of closing ability since Lawrence Taylor. and I've been watching the game that long. To me, it's and plus with Nolan Smith, you don't get the constant running of the mouth, right? The constant conversation that Micah Parsons like to generate, and also Micah Parsons takes half the plays off every game on Game Film. Nolan Smith doesn't do that as well. Nolan Smith is a guy who, standing up, coming off the edge, uses his first. He has a very fast first step. That's the first thing I want to illustrate. Second thing is he uses his hands exceptionally well. He's an accomplished pass rusher with a full toolbox of pass rush moves. He can bring it. He has enough speed to win the back door against the offensive tackles, or he can slip back and bring it back to the inside. This is a guy, Nolan Smith, who creates a lot of pressure and a lot of disruption, and that's what it's all about when it comes to today's pass-happy NFL.
There we go. All right, number 5, Calijah Kancey, defensive tackle, Pitt.
Love him. I'd send him a Valentine's Day card if I could. I love Calijah Kancey. I'm getting this guy's jersey when I can to wear it around town. This to me is a modern day Warren Sapp.
That's what got me, and I definitely wanted to get you on that. That is obviously a Hall of Fame comparison, Warren Sapp. But tell us a little bit about why you have him. Why you're so high on Kancey.
Absolutely, one of my absolute favorite players in the first round. Let's put it this way: if Mike Tyson was a football player, he'd be Calijah Kancey.
Okay.
This guy's a pocket record. This guy plays like he means it. He's coming on every single play. He's tenacious. He's vicious at the point of attack. These are key words that get thrown around the NFL war room. Mm-hmm. He's got violent hands at the point of attack. He draws a lot of double teams. He draws a lot of attention. Teams are scared of him. He's a guy that's an authority. He has the ability. He has the pure brute power and strength to be an authoritative bull rusher. And what do I mean by that? Is he can take an offensive guard and he can drive him right back in skates, as we say in scouting, right back into the quarterback. Or he can press the gaps extremely hard too. He's athletic. Wow, is he athletic? He's got bend. This is not one of these stiff, rigid guys. Like a Will Anderson Jr. or a Brian Brzee or a Tyree Wilson. These guys that are stiff and rigid and have a hard time making quick adjustments. Calijah Kancey can make quick adjustments. He has that type of a bend and athleticism. He closes hard. He closes like he wants it. He's what I call quarterback minded, meaning all he wants to do is get to the quarterback. This guy's not looking just to collect a check and just be 9-8. This guy he rushes a passer like he wants it. That's what we talked about earlier with that want. He sets the table very well. He keeps offensive guards guessing. So a lot of times, there's some plays where he'll kind of take it easy or he'll do something else. To me, he's setting the table, and then boom, he comes in for the kill shot. He can smell vulnerability, like Micah Parsons talks about being a lion. He could smell that vulnerability from a mile away. He understands vulnerabilities. He understands where the way into the pocket may be. He's solid against the run, and he's a devastating hitter who tries to knock people's teeth out. That's where I come up with the Mike Tyson comparison. Mm-hmm. This guy hits you like he means it. To me, he's a culture changer. This is when this terminology, that I've developed is that he's a guy you bring in and he changes things. He's infectious. The way he plays the game is infectious. He raises other people's level of play around him. Is what I mean by that. He moves the meter. He's a guy that is just, I can't say enough good things about Calijah Kancey. He's severely underrated, severely flying under the radar right now. People are wasting their time talking about Will Anderson Jr. Calijah Kancey is a guy that we should be talking about, because below Jalen Carter, as far as defensive linemen are concerned, mm-hmm. they're right there. Those two guys are right there neck and neck.
Good stuff. So natural talent combined with outstanding defensive coaching in college with Pat Narduzzi. So we'll see what it comes out to be on the next level. All right, number 6, Emmanuel Forbes, cornerback, Mississippi State. And I see a Sauce Gardner comparison. Tell me about that.
Yes, absolutely. Emmanuel Forbes, the closest thing to Sauce Gardner in the 2023 NFL draft. And I'm a guy that had Sauce Gardner as my CB1 heading in the 2022 draft. I comped him to Champ Bailey. I came out in May, an article in Sports Illustrated Jets saying that Sauce Gardner would be the best corner in the NFL this season. Not just rookie, but the best corner. And so when I look at Emmanuel Forbes, he's another one of my very favorites because he's a playmaker. He's a guy that had 14 interceptions, 22 passes defended to confirm the film. I'm not a stat scout like people accuse me of sometimes, but the stats a lot of times will confirm the evaluation. They'll confirm the game film. And in Forbes' situation, they've confirmed it. And that any criticism anybody has out there about Emmanuel Forbes' size, listen, it doesn't really matter what size you are. You know, it's like Elijah Cansey talked about, you know, about the comparison of sizes and all this kind of thing. When you're out there, I mean, Emmanuel Forbes has gone up against every size receiver there is in college football, and he's held his own. And he's a ball hawk who loves to bait quarterbacks. If you don't believe me, ask Will Levis. He's got good straight line speed. He's flexible. He excels in press man. That's what I love about him. He wants to come right up on receivers and let them know that he's right there and he's going to be there all day long. He has the ability, an excellent ability to mirror the receivers, almost like two people dancing on a dance floor. Every move the receiver makes, he makes. Excellent at maintaining route leverage, being able to stay with the receivers. He uses the boundaries like Sauce Gardner did at Cincinnati as a friend. As a friend.
Defender. Yep.
Yeah, extra defender. He'll press the receivers against the boundary real hard. He's somebody that he has that coveted must-have short area burst, I feel, of a top 10 corner in the draft. It's a prerequisite for playmakers, the ability, that extra little gear, that little jump in speed when the ball's in the air. Boop, he's right there. He can make that little jump in speed towards the ball. He's got those big old long arms that he can reach in there and, get the ball batted away or intercepted. This guy is and for anybody who criticizes his size, watch Emmanuel Forbes come downhill on a wide receiver bubble or a screen. He will flat out thump people. He comes up and he hits as hard as Clyde Cansey does at his size. I mean, he doesn't have the same impact, but he brings it. There's no back down in Emmanuel Forbes, which I love. He's demonstrative. Another guy, I'm getting his jersey. This guy's got the thing that you need. You need that confidence. You're on an island. He's got swag. He's got that, his whole aura. When you watch the game film, and you can go on the site on firstroundmock.com. You can pull the report. You can watch this for yourself. There's just like he has a cologne on that says confidence. Everything, just confidence oozes out of him.
So, quick question for you before we move on to number 7. You've got an elite cornerback like that, but he still puts up numbers: 14 interceptions and 22 PBUs, as you mentioned. Why are quarterbacks still throwing in his direction? And I say that to say the comp that you mentioned, Sauce Gardner, you literally saw him take number 1 receivers out of the game a couple of years ago against Alabama in the college football playoff. They would not even throw at Sauce Gardner. And this is the great Nick Saban, and Bill O'Brien, a quality NFL OC. That is the respect they had for him. So what's missing that quarterbacks are still throwing at Emmanuel Forbes enough for him to have the type of counting stats that he has?
That's a great question. If I was to take an educated guess at it, I think it's a lack of respect that they've had for him. The interesting thing, to your point, when I watched Mississippi State play against Saban and play against Bryce Young, they only threw at him one time. That told me something.
There you go. Okay.
That told me something, because I was curious of the same thing myself. And so I wanted to see, because level of competition is a key component to the evaluation process. I wanted to see, okay, this will be interesting. When I turn on the Alabama game, I'll say, are they going to try to victimize him and go at him, or are they going to stay clear of him? And the respect that Nick Saban showed him said, okay, yeah, that's the guy. That's my CB1.
There we go. So let's go number 7. That is A.T. Perry, wide receiver, Wake Forest. Tell us about him.
I love A.T. Perry, and I'm higher on him than anybody in America. To me, I look at this, when I watch the game film, kind of like I talked about before, when a Warren Moon goes through my mind, when I watch C.J. Stroud or a Fran Tarkenton, when I watch Bryce Young, when I watch A.T. Perry with that big size and frame he has, thoughts of CeeDee Lamb go through my mind, Justin Jefferson, Al Toon, Keyshawn, Johnson, Dez Bryant. These are the kind of names that go through my mind when I'm watching A.T. Perry play. A.T. Perry is the only true number one receiver I've seen in this draft, that alpha receiver that you line up on the outside. He's a dominant receiver to go with good size and speed that can and will stretch a defense. He's got good athletic ability, strong hands. A criticism I have of him is he has an inconsistent release. He shows that he's able to release very well. Other times he doesn't. That's one of my concerns. But when he does decide to do it, he can easily achieve route leverage with his quick feet and his big frame. No problem at all. I love how crisp A.T. Perry is at the break points of routes. The route, when the route at the top of the route, when they change direction, A.T. Perry has incredible athletic ability to change direction. Every bit of athletic ability is a Josh Downs or a Jordan Addison have. That ability, just the Garrett Wilsons of the world, that ability just to quickly, just like that. And there's very few corners in the NFL outside of a Sauce Gardner and a few others that have the ability to mirror that. They have that kind of athletic ability to mirror that change of direction. That's where separation. That's where throwing windows get created. A.T. Perry is incredibly crisp for a big man at the break point of the routes. He has fast get up and go from a stop position. Another thing I really like about him. And he bullies corners, okay? He swats away corners the way that you and I would swat at a fly in the kitchen. You know what I mean? Like, right. It's like a fly swatter. Get out of here. Get away from me. And he's a bully. I can't wait to see him just dominate against NFL corners. Okay. He's good. All three route levels, he's good. He can get deep. He's an emotional showboat. He's got that to him. He's an offensive player with a defensive mentality. I love A.T. Perry. He's on my Valentine's Day card list as well.
Good stuff. All right, number 8, Cody March, left tackle, North Dakota State. Obviously,
love him.
He didn't get to line up against some of the best defensive competition, but what stands out about him?
Well, it's interesting because every year there's a North Dakota State guy now. It seems like
that way, right?
Yeah, there is. Whether it's Trey Lance a couple of years ago, or Christian Watson last year. I don't understand why Cody March is not getting the same kind of love this year in the draft as those two received, because he's got the best feet of any offensive tackle in this draft. And yes, when you're looking at North Dakota, you have to take that level of competition and a lower level of competition into consideration. But it's fun watching Cody March on game film, because his footwork and his lateral foot speed on the outside is so fast and so coordinated. I never saw him even cross over his feet one time. He was just effortless watching. It was like taking a joystick on a video game and just controlling the guy, moving up and down the pocket. He's incredibly versatile, which he's shown at the Senior Bowl. He can play pretty much all 5 positions on the offensive line, which I think he brings more value to a team than anybody else in that capacity. He's tenacious, hardcore want. This is a guy that shows that he wants to win. Going back to that Bill Parcells, critical factor of scouting, he wants it. He's incredibly athletic. He's able to maintain a real nice base, like I talked about, sliding out in complete control, has blocking leverage, powerful upper body, handles spins and stunts and games with ease, gets after it. This guy is excuse my language, he's an ass-kicking run blocker. This guy, I mean, he has no front teeth even. He blocks people so hard. He hits people so hard. He punishes linebackers, punishes defensive backs, dominant pulling offensive lineman. A little hit and miss once he's out there in space, like most of them are, except for the great ones. But yeah, this guy is everything you want an offensive tackle. He's not getting the love he should get at all. This guy is leaps and bounds better than Skoronski, better than Paris Johnson Jr. on the edge.
Wow.
Both those guys I question at the back door. Broderick Jones, he's much better than him in terms of his lateral footwork. Absolutely. This guy is incredible, and he brings that. This is the first guy you want off your bus. You want the guy with he comes out with the long hair, no front teeth. Right. This is a tone setter. This is a guy, like last year, Akeem Awanku from North Carolina State, who I loved. Kind of just a culture changer, just a guy that has that defensive mentality as an offensive player. I love Cody Mauch. I think he's going to show the world that he's by far and away the best left tackle in this draft.
Gotcha. Number 9, Anton Harrison, left tackle, Oklahoma.
Very similar to my quarterback comparison, the give and take between Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. There's the same thing between Cody Mauch and Anton Harrison. Either way, you're in great shape if you get either one of these guys at left tackle. To me, I've compared Anton Harrison to Trent Williams 2.0 is what my affectionate nickname for him is. This guy is nimble at his size. That's a word you want to hear. You want a dancing ballerina, a dancing bear at left tackle. That's him. He's active, long arms, equally distributed upper and lower body power, nice wide base, complete control, blocking leverage in the pass setup and pass pro, excellent recovery ability. Like what I mean is when, a defensive end or an edge rusher takes him to the back door and then quickly moves back hard to the inside, he can handle that. No problem. He handles stunts in games. He handles fast, athletic pass rushers. He's shown that on game film. Excellent leverage and positional run blocker who stays off the ground a lot, so he'll probably stay healthy that way. That's another great sign. And he looks and plays smart, and he blocks like he means it. This guy's not coming to collect a check. This guy's coming in to win football games.
There you go. And last in the run of offensive linemen here, number 10, O'Cyrus Torrence, right guard, Florida.
Well, this guy's going to be a guy that's near and dear to your heart if you like Quentin Nelson.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure, because this is the most dominant guard to come into the NFL draft since Quentin Nelson. Came out of Notre Dame with the Colts, of course. Let me start by saying 6'5", 347.
Big boy.
Absolutely hasn't missed a meal. But here's where it gets really radical for me, and it gets really exciting because you got this great big size and this great big frame. He's like a refrigerator, like a stove in the kitchen, right? He's just tough to move. Need 2-3 men to help you move it. He's got that. But also he's a big, quick man who's got equally distributed power as well. He's just as strong in the upper body as the lower body. He excels both in pass and run blocking. A really well-rounded, complete offensive guard. Offensive guards aren't fun; they're not sexy to take in the top 10. But trust me, this is a guy that's worth it. He's alert. His head's always on a swivel. He's always looking. Okay, my job is done. Okay, I'm coming to help you next. He does a lot of that. He's selfless in that capacity. He helps his teammates. He's good in combo blocks. It's nice, sturdy, wide base, like I talked about, with that nice, strong, rock solid, lower body. Good hand usage. This is a big thing for guards. Hand usage. He's got control. He puts the hands on the inside. He's really a brick wall when it comes to pass pro. That's what he is. He handles stunts in games with ease. It basically causes him to yawn when he's in there. He's somebody that's a tenacious positional run blocker. He seals lanes up very, very well for running lanes. He's so strong. He can get movement in short yardage situations, which is critically important for goal line and short yardage situations. Just run behind Torrence. He's excellent pulling. He gets out in space, no problem. This guy, O'Cyrus Torrence, has all pro written all over him. I love this guy. He's going to be a dominant. It's going to be when people talk about Quentin Nelson, they're going to talk about this guy in the same breath as the two best guards in the league, in my opinion.
There we go.